I think George A. Romero's importance in the cinematic zombie universe is pretty undisputable. He may not have been the first to portray zombie adventures in the movies, but he was undoubtedly one of the most important and influenceable directors in this horror subgenre. I'd say that he more or less created the early modern zombie canon. Even today there are some things we expect zombies to do or not to do. We expect them to be pretty much immortal, unless you inflict deadly force to the brain. Alternately sever the head altogether. Of course, there are variants of this through zombie history, but I say that most zombie movies still uses the cinematic truth. Zombies did exist before Night of the Living Dead from 1968, but I think most of them was looking at the voodoo or hoodoo traditions. A zombie was not really a living dead. It was more like a person that was hypnotized or controlled by someone else. From the top of my head, I think of White Zombie with the great Bela Lugosi. But it's also easy to draw parallels the German expressionism film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I did mention that movie in the History of Horror episode, The Early Years. But back to Romero. Night of the Living Dead was his first feature film attempt, and with history in hindsight, it's easy to claim a success. At least a success if you take the cult following it has today into consideration.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant!
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're acting like a child!
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
He'll hear you!
Here he comes now. I'm getting out of here.
Johnny!
Few zombie films have been as influential as that one. It also contains one of the few movies quotes I actually know by heart. It's such a classic. The first time I saw it was actually a bit of a disappointment for me. At the time it was very hard to buy movies in Sweden, and I was visiting London. Apart from vacation I was also there with the purpose to buy movies home with me. One of them was Night of the Living Dead, and I had read that the colorized version was the one to have. I shouldn't have read that. I don't mind the color at all, but the surprise elements got lost as you immediately could see who was a zombie or not. They had a greenish skin tone. So that was a letdown. The suspense was lost. I have since then watched it many times but always in the original black and white. That is the best way to experience the movie, no doubt about it. But what is Night of the Living Dead? Is it just a horror movie? I would say no. In my mind it's a study of human nature and what happens when there's an outer threat coming at us. At first we ally with whomever we can to strengthen ourselves. But that is just for a limited period of time. After a while, one or more individuals starts to get paranoid and stops listening to common sense. This is when the internal battle begins. There is one group or individual within the group who stays logical and see to the common well-being of all. At the same time some within the masses will start to act irrational and only see to themselves. In lack of better terms, we start to see a narcissistic side. One or more individuals think that they should be in charge because that strengthens their chances for survival. It's a purely egocentric tactic even if these individuals don't see it as that. I think it's subconscious and that's what makes it scary. It's not the zombies who are dangerous, it's the fellow man right beside us. Usually they rise to power via internal violence and think that their ideas is much better, but it always goes south. They make bad decisions and eventually all hell breaks loose. In this analysis, I will focus on the first movies of The Living Dead by Romero. He also made a few other movies of course. IMDb has information of 24 director credits by Romero. Some of them are not zombie related at all but most embrace the horror genre for sure. Night of the Living Dead was released in 1968 and centers around this cabin where a group of survivors barricade themselves to fight off the zombies. There's really no clue to why they appear. I don't think there's ever an explanation formulated in this first film. The zombies just exists and starts to attack the living. If you get bitten by one of them, you turn into a zombie yourself. It's a pretty small-scale story. Everything, more or less, happens in that house. When Romero gave us Dawn of the Dead in 1978 we have a little bigger scope. I'm not sure if the universe of Night of the Living Dead exists or not in this story, but if it does, it doesn't take place 10 years later. I'd say that the story in Dawn of the Dead starts just as the title suggests, at the dawn when the night is just ended. We get to follow the story from a little larger perspective. The dead has taken over the world, and there's really no place to hide. Shortage of food has started to become a fact. Or at least it will become that very soon in the storyline. The main cast is not much more people this time, but the set is larger. Instead of a house, the majority of the movie now takes place in a shopping mall. It's a great place to barricade themselves, really. There are things to do and there are food in the abandoned stores and restaurants. There is also the social commentary about brainless shoppers roaming in the mall. Something that I guess is true to this day. People, especially young people, spend their time in the mall and don't think so much about the consequences. Eventually, this group of survivors manage to rid the mall of the zombies though, and a new normal begins. But it also breaks something. There's no excitement anymore, everything becomes dull and without meaning. 100% tranquility has no meaning. We need both sides of the emotional scale to give us a purpose or to make us feel anything else than phlegmatism. I think that goes for us viewers as well. It's no fun watching a movie where nothing happens. We need some drama. And drama we get when this motorcycle gang storms into the scene. They break into the mall just for fun, to kill zombies, and also to collect provision, of course. They also need food. And there we go again. They want it all for themselves and cannot share anything with someone else. It's everyone for his own. If humanity united against a zombie threat, maybe we would have a fighting chance, but no. We can't have any of that. Tom Savini plays the leader of the motorcycle gang, by the way. At least I think he is the leader. In my mind, he's first and foremost known for his makeup effects, but these days I don't think he does much of that. Sometimes we can see him acting in small parts. He did direct a remake of The Night of the Living Dead in 1990 though. I think he and George Romero were pretty close friends, so that might be why he got that job, I don't know. In my mind, that remake is pretty unnecessary too. It's more or less a copy of the original movie. The effects are new, of course, and it's a little more modern all around. Speaking of remakes, Dawn of the Dead was remade in 2004. There are a couple of different opinions of it, of course. I think there was a lot of discussions about the zombies in that one. Of course, when it comes to many horror buffs, to remake a movie that is considered a masterpiece is an abomination. I think many of us, including myself, never gave it a chance when it first came out. The main plot was the same, or similar at least. But what really divided people was the speed of the zombies. In Romero's movies, they were always slow and faltering, yet very deadly if you were bitten. In this new take of the story, there was nothing slow about them at all. I'm not sure, but I think that was the first time I got confronted with running zombies. It was not living corpses luring in the shadows for human meat, it was zombies running at top speed to attack the people. I think that it was kind of new at the time and created controversy among zombie fans. Of course, human survival is endured in both of these movies. But at a cost of comrades and bystanders. I think we have set the social commentary by now. In Romero's 1978 original Dawn of the Dead, the plot takes place in a broader sense. There's not just a cabin anymore, it's on another society level this time. In the next take of the zombie saga, Day of the Dead from 1985, we now have survived the initial wave of zombies. We have barricaded us in an underground facility. The military and the scientists collaborate. They collect specimens from the surface and conduct experiments on them to be able to figure out a cure. Do you think the military and the scientists can stick together for long? Of course not. We see the same type of decay again. Some of the people think they should be in charge and the other group disagrees. There is some steady rock holding it all together to begin with, but it changes when the frustration and, in lack of better terms, cabin fever sets in. There is a conflict. We have a larger scale this time. We have broadened the perspective even more compared to Dawn of the Dead. I think this is the first time we actually get a reason for why the dead roams the earth too. I might be very wrong here, but I think it's in this one it's explained That there's no more room in hell. That mean exactly nothing, of course. But it's a good catchphrase. This is also the first time we are acquainted with a somewhat intelligent zombie. We get to meet Bob, which is an experiment created by the scientists. We are confronted with a dilemma here. Bob is a zombie, but he's not really dangerous. He can control his urges to eat human flesh. Is he like a domesticated animal, or is he part human? Where do you draw the lines? Should he be killed, or should he be allowed to live? Can you actually trust him? Doesn't the wild always stay in a wild animal? Is it possible to control him? At the end, this society as well as in the two predecessors fail. There is chaos, and man turn against man to prove his point, or to ensure the survival of oneself. You see that the story more or less is the same in all of the movies. I never thought that there will be another zombie movie made in this series. There were rumors about one called Twilight of the Dead being planned, but it never surfaced. Instead, there was Land of the Dead in 2005. I think the mystique was somewhat gone by then. But for the sake of this analysis, I will mention it here. There are some known actors in this one. Dennis Hopper for one, which is a very odd actor to have in a zombie movie. But on the other hand, he was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 as well, so I guess he made what he wanted. Absolutely not an actor who got caught in a typecast. We also have John Leguizamo and Asia Argento, so the actors are solid. In Land of the Dead, we have now gone from a cabin to a mall to a military base and are at a larger picture. Now we have a whole city in the plot. But it's still more or less the same. These films are not really about zombies. They're about human nature and what we do when we're pressured. It seems like we always look out for number one, ourselves, at least in George A. Romero's universe. We're incapable of collaboration without a hidden agenda, and we always want the power position for ourselves. Sad but true, that is what my conclusion of these films are. Romero made a couple of more zombie movies after Land of the Dead. There are Diary of the Dead from 2007 and Survival of the Dead from 2009, but I'll save those for a rainy day. As always, put your thumbs up and like this clip. Comment down below and stay safe. Tommy from ActiveContext.